And we are back. Great Lakes State Football, episode 31, talking everything football in the state of Michigan. And I am Vince.
I'm Kory, and I am tired.
Nice to meet you.
And I'm Brett, and I'm also tired. Had
I'm on the podcast with two tireds.
Long road trips with a 1-year-old, although she did very good. But I did a lot of exciting things this weekend. Didn't get a lot of sleep, but it's good to be home, as always. Kory, welcome back to Michigan. You were gone all week last week.
I was gone for 7 days. I felt like my wife didn't know who I was or my cats, but it was good. Minnesota was interesting. The stadium was crazy, and we'll get to that in a later part of this episode, but we're going to get through this, and then I'm going to go to bed.
That's about what I'm going to do. I've been up every night past midnight game planning for a big time week on Friday, big time game coming up. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But yeah, pretty cool. We had one member of our podcast at Penn State Stadium watching Central Michigan, Penn State, and Kory was out in Minnesota watching the Lions at the Minnesota Lions game. So we'll talk about those a little bit later in the episode. We're going to get into high school before we talk about the Lions and college football. But we are very excited for this episode because we do have a guest coming on that is a Mr. Goosepoop. Or Cannon Dean is his real name, aka Goosepoop on Twitter and Instagram, as well as his pretty cool website and newsletter that he puts out. So we've talked about Goosepoop for the last few weeks here, and we actually interviewed him back in the summer. So I'll make sure for this episode, I link that in the description. If you want to check out our interview with him back in, I think it was something like July when we talked to him. But we're very excited to have him on this week to talk about the just over halfway point of the regular season of Michigan high school football. Pretty crazy that we are on to week 6 already. We've gotten through 5 games, 5 weeks of high school football. And this weekend, we're on to week 6 already. We only got 4 weeks left of the regular season. So we want to talk with Cannon or Mr. Goosepoop about any surprises or anything he's noticed about this season, especially in terms of the things he's been putting out, his computer wizard, his models, his algorithms, the things he's been doing to predict stuff. So that'll be fun. We'll look forward to having him on here very soon. Before we bring him on, though, we would like to talk about our picks of the week from last week. So we're going to talk about 5 games that we profiled in last week's episode that we thought were worth checking out or paying attention to. There was a lot of games we could have picked, as we mentioned last week, or any of these episodes we've been doing this season, but we try to vary it up in terms of the divisions that we're picking and making sure we're not overlapping with Goosepoop or some of the other outlets like the D Zone that are putting out high profile games. We try to spread it out a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, so that anyone who is watching on YouTube here can see what we got going on.
Was that a little pig Latin? What are we in 5th grade?
YouTube.
That sounded like Michigan's transfer defensive end. He just changed his last name again, by the way.
Hey Vince, before you get into this, I'm gonna request, based on what I saw last week, move our pictures to the bottom of the screen.
I just did that.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
I know. I noticed that too. This has been a bit of a learning curve for me these last few weeks, trying to figure out what looks best when I share my screen. And so hopefully this works this week. We'll see here. I just put our windows on the bottom of my screen, so I don't know if that's how it's going to show up or not. So I guess we'll see. We'll play around with it a little bit. But anyway, if you're watching, if you're just listening, then it doesn't matter to you. But if you're one of the select few who chooses to watch these on YouTube, then hopefully you can see right now our picks, which we'll run through here in just a second. So we had 5 games we picked last week, kind of pretty good, I'd say, variety of divisional matchups here. First pick of last week was West Bloomfield versus Rochester Adams, 2 big time D1 schools. It was a unanimous pick from all of us, Brett, Kory, myself, as well as Goosepoop, to go with West Bloomfield. And Adams came out big time on this one, 35-18. The one thing that I mentioned about this game last week is any one of these teams, I picked West Bloomfield, but I said, going into this matchup, any one of these teams I feel like could beat each other from this conference, or just that area of the state in general. that Oakland area. There's so much competition over there between all those D1 schools that every year it's like they slug it out with each other. Anything that you guys took away from this game? 35-18 Rochester Adams over West Bloomfield.
Kind of a butt kicking, but I'll agree with you. It was a toss up. I regret not taking Adams because my gut was telling me Adams. I even said that on air last week. So that's my 2 cents.
I just figured Adams beat them twice last year. I thought it'd be hard for Adams to beat him again, but a different year, I guess.
I thought it was interesting to open up the game. Adams fumbled, and then they had West Bloomfield went down and scored, and then they got the ball back, and they missed a field goal. And then the next drive, they dropped a touchdown. And so they're behind the 8 ball a little bit, and then they ended up coming back and winning 35-18, which was really interesting, especially being behind like that to a team like West Bloomfield. It wasn't a huge comeback, but nonetheless a comeback.
It just cracks me up because this is where you get into the transitive property, right? Because you get Clarkston, who beats Adams 45-35, loses to West Bloomfield 27-35. Yet West Bloomfield gets destroyed by Adam. I mean, it's just, that's where high school football can be so interesting and why you can't play that transitive prop, because it's like any week, especially when you get good teams like this, you never know who's on and who's going to be off week to week. So it'll be interesting to see out of that region, who comes out on top, because they all have to face each other again in the playoffs.
I always resort back to that year. I think it was my final year coaching at Grand Ledge, or maybe the year before that, when we played Brother Rice and we were not very good. And we took Brother Rice like down to the wire.
We had a Hail Mary from midfield to either win it or tie it up at the end of the game.
But they scored. I was going to say they scored with like a minute to go or 2 minutes to go, maybe.
Now that wasn't traditionally power heavy or strong Brother Rice teams. If I remember that year, they got beat in the district final. And I think they ended up having 3 or 4 losses, but overall, I think they went like 6-3 or 7-4 in the playoffs. But still, I mean, you never know. I mean, especially when you get D1 schools, as long as they're, healthy, you never know what can happen. But the next game here, I am as shocked as anybody. I don't know how you guys feel about this one, but we had Fowler versus Palm Westphalia. A matchup of 2 big-time rivals in the CMAC. Fowler was undefeated and ranked like top 1 or 2 in the state in Division 8. I think they were either 1 or 2, maybe 3. And PW, who is the defending D7 state champions. PW had not lost to Fowler since I think 2014, and Fowler prevailed 20-16. This game was at Fowler. I watched some of the highlights on the news. Fowler had a 13-3 halftime lead, and Palm Westphalia actually took a 16-13 lead with only a couple minutes left in the game, and Fowler scored right at the end. Very close to the end of the game, right, to win this one. So thoughts on this game?
So Palm Westphalia now has 2 losses within the first 5 games. Outside of the year 2020, they haven't had 2 losses in a season since 2014 when they had 3 losses. So this was an enormous upset. And all you have to do is look at the winning percentage model that Goosepoop has. PW had a 92% chance of winning.
That's crazy. They just don't lose. They haven't lost in years. And who's their first loss to?
They got beat by Redford Union, who's like Division 4. They're like 3 divisions bigger.
So that one's okay, but this is a bad loss.
I wouldn't call it a bad loss because it's an undefeated top ranked team, but it's a surprising loss just because they've had Fowler's number for 8 years now. here's the transitive property again. I think Brett brought this up. They had a common opponent in Dansville. PW beat Dansville 51-8. Fowler only beat them 20-14. But that's just how, like, week to week, you never know. Like, a team could play their worst game or play their best game, week to week. You just never know what's going to happen with that kind of stuff. But
I'm sure that was a fun atmosphere. Both those teams, the whole village gets behind them.
You didn't see any of the clips on the news?
No.
It was standing room only. They had students like standing. They had a fence. They had like one of those makeshift fences in the back of the end zone. So when they score at the end of the game, it was just a crowd at the back of the end zone. Like the stands, they showed clips of the stands were completely packed. Like it was a like staying room only game. Pretty cool. Fun,
Yeah,
small town high school football.
I didn't see that. I was somewhere in Ohio, but it sounds like an awesome atmosphere.
Yeah, the video looked like a pretty cool game to be at. Next game, we had a matchup of Division 5 and Division 4 teams in Frankenmuth and Freeland. Unfortunately, I was the only one who picked Freeland. Probably should have went with my gut and picked Frankenmuth. So I lost this one. Brett, Kory, and Goosepoop all picked Frankenmuth. Although Goosepoop put out that this was actually an upset according to his computer wizard. The users picked Frankenmuth. 91% of the users picked Frankenmuth, but his computer wizard actually had Freeland as a 1-point favorite. He put that on Twitter, and this was one of the upsets he had from last week. So the final score was 21-0 Frankenmuth. So I don't know a whole lot about this game. I just looked at some of the scores from their games this year and last year. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add on this one other than Frankenmuth's really, really good. I think they're at 5-0
Really
now,
good. A shutout in a big game like that is impressive. It always is.
They've been good for a few years now, and it's just they need to get over that hump. They made one trip to Ford Field, and they'll just win it.
Next game is another game of small town football here. Standish Sterling and Millington. This was a game that was pretty tight in terms of the users for Goosepoop. They had Standish Sterling only 60%. We unanimously picked Standish Sterling, and we got that one right. They won 28-24. So it was a very close game. I think the most noteworthy thing here is I think that is the lowest point total, if I remember correctly, for the season thus far for Standish Sterling. So Millington, that was their first loss on the year. So really impressive defensive job there by Millington. Yeah, I'm looking right now. The previous low for the season for Standish Sterling was 31 against Ithaca, and they won that game.
So Standish Sterling, historically a pretty bad football program, goes on these little spurts of wins. 2008, 2009, 2007, 2008, they were 10-2 and 12-1. Their next best season was 9-2 in 2013, under 500 until 2021.
Yeah, until last year.
5-0.
You guys wouldn't even believe me if I told you how many Standish Sterling guys were on Northwood's team from probably 08 to 2014. It was a disgusting amount.
Oh, I bet.
And that's probably didn't help us.
Not too far from not too far from Midland, right?
No, probably an hour.
Y'all from Midland, right?
Trying to take my football away from me. All right, a little Friday Night Lights there for you. Last game, we had another big D1 matchup here of unbeaten OK Red powerhouse. I don't know if I'd call these two teams powerhouses. They actually are two teams that traditionally haven't had quite as much success in the OK Red, but over the last half dozen years or so here have found renewed success. I believe they both have won state championships back in the early 2000s, if I remember correctly.
Caledonia has.
Granville did too, I believe, in 2002.
It's just before Grand Ledge or just after Grand Ledge?
You mean before they played Grand Ledge?
No, when Grand Ledge won the state finals.
I think so. I have to go back and look. Granville either went to a state title or won a state title, I feel like, around that time. I don't remember the exact year. If one of you guys want to help fact check me while I'm talking about this.
Looking, they only played 13 games for a couple of years.
Oh, so maybe they only went to a semifinal? Did you look and see if it was a year where they maybe had a bye week and went all the way?
I'm looking.
Anyway, Caledonia and Granville got into a shootout. The final score was 50-40 Caledonia. I can't remember if it was Kory or Brett. One of them mentioned Granville.
1996. Sorry, they won in 1996.
Oh, so I was right. I thought they won a state title back in the day. This was a game that unfortunately I was the only one who got wrong. So I got knocked back 2 games this week because of my Freeland pick and my Granville pick. Granville did not play very good defense. Usually if you score 40 points in a game, I would hope you'd win, but can't give up 50. So Goosepoop picked this one as well. His users had a 59%. Brett is now at 18-7 along with Goosepoop. Goosepoop's model is at 18-7 as well. Kory's at 16-9, and I am at 15.
I didn't fix that stat. Fix that number. 16-9 doesn't work out, right?
No, that's 25.
Oh, okay.
It
Never
is
mind. We're
25.
good.
Everyone's at 25 games.
We're good.
He's tired. It's okay.
Seems right to me because I was 1 game ahead of you and I got 2 wrong, right? So now I'm 2 back.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. My brain's not working.
Any other thoughts or things you guys would like to mention on last week's games?
There's
Otherwise,
starting
we'll
to
be talking
be
Goosepoop soon.
a little bit of separation going on in the OK Red now. Caledonia and Rockford both on top undefeated. Granville and EK were up there too, but Rockford beat Kentwood last week, and obviously Caledonia beat Granville. And so Rockford and Caledonia don't play each other until the last week of the season. That'll be a big game.
Isn't that what happened last year too?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm excited to see what happens.
No, last year, Caledonia played Hudsonville at the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say I'm excited to see what's going to happen towards the end of the year because obviously the elite programs are still playing at elite level, but we're going to have some turnover. I feel like in the state championship realms, like it doesn't look like PW is going to run it back. It looks like Rochester Adams and West Bloomfield will play each other again.
LCC won't be there.
Or did West
Catholic?
Sorry, they played Belleville, but yeah, it'll be good.
Grand Rapids Catholic Central will probably be back.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree, Kory. A couple of those teams.
That's something we'll talk with Goosepoop about as he tracks.
Yeah.
He does this little thing where he tracks the defending state champs, how they're doing, see what he thinks. So
A little mixy in there.
all right. I think with that, we are going to bring on our guest here. So I hope you enjoy our conversation here with Goosepoop. We're just going to talk with him about the Michigan high school football season as it stands, a little bit more than halfway, and some of the things he's doing and plans to do in the coming weeks as the season wraps up and gets into playoffs. We're going to go ahead and segue into our guest portion of the podcast here a little bit earlier in the episode than we traditionally do. That's because for this week, our guest is Mr. Candine, aka Goosepoop, or Mr. Poop, as Kory likes to call him. Cannon or Goosepoop is on tonight to talk a few different things with Michigan high school football. We did have him on back in, I believe it was June or July. It was this summer, and did a little interview about Goosepoop and the origins of, some of the things that he's been doing and working on putting out. So if you'd like to check out that episode, that interview, we will have that linked in the description. But otherwise, hang on to this episode here. Check this out because we're going to be talking everything high school football, or at least is through the numbers, as he likes to say. We're going to be talking high school football through the numbers. Goosepoop, how you doing, man?
Doing well, guys. Glad to be back on.
Glad to have you.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, we had talked about trying to get you on during the season. So when we were like, it might be fun to have him on for the halfway point or just over halfway point, thought that'd be a good time to check in and see what's going on, your thoughts on Michigan high school football thus far. So speaking of which, we'll go ahead and jump right into it. Any thoughts, anything that jumps out to you so far, just in general about the season in terms of upsets, surprises, things that you're not surprised about, anyone underperforming or overperforming, things like that, whether it's just your opinion or anything that you're noticing from your models and your picks on your website?
Probably the top thing that's been very interesting thus far is just the level of parity. That's been, I think, there's probably two vectors of parity. Number one, just the number of state final or the number of our state champions that have lost thus far this year already.
Yeah.
So I think we're down to just 3 returning state champions that have yet to be defeated this year. Belleville,
oh yeah,
Grand Rapids Catholic Central, and Hudson. Yep. The rest have all lost, and actually, I think Lansing Catholic had an 0-3 start to the year, right? So it's not to pick on Lansing Catholic there, but just kind of just like an example of the parity that's been at play across the tops of each division. The other thing that's been pretty interesting is just running our computer model each week. For those listening, we've started to run a computer model that sets spreads and over unders on each game. just like the level of parity that's at play at the top of Division One in particular. And I think we've seen that play out here in the last week where we kind of completed the OAA round robin where Clarkston defeated Adams. Adams defeated Bloomfield, and Bloomfield defeated Clarkston, right? So just like, and that's one example, but I think that's like across all of the top, maybe the top 10 teams in D1 there, they're all fairly close, the models rating. I think there's high potential to see that same thing play out in the OK Red on this side of the state as well. We've got Rockford, Granville this week. Rockford's going to be favored, but I would not be surprised at all if Granville pulls the upset. So
last year they went into like 4 overtimes. That was an insane game last year between those two teams.
Absolutely. And I think the game's always pretty tough. And Granville always presents a tough matchup with the T offense that they run. And it's just, I expect a good one. And, just kind of generally like this level of parity is very, very healthy for the sport, I think. So it's not good to have teams dominate it for long stretches. No one wants to see that. So
we just said that before you jumped on that we think this year the state championship matchups are going to be all sorts of jacked up.
In a good way.
In a good way. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. It's fun and exciting. And hopefully see some teams, who have either never been there or let alone never won one. It's always fun and exciting when you get to see new teams in the state championship, state finals.
Yeah. So if you guys, on that note, I was looking at kind of our computer model by division, and you can see how many points a team is better than other people. And I was looking at the divisions, and if you guys had to guess, what is the most, where is it the most even at what division of the 8 would you say?
I would have to say number 1, just based on what you had said earlier.
Yeah, I would say just based
the teams
off
that
of
are beating each other. And
yeah, it's a good guess. Actually, there's been, I think last week that would have been the case, but with Caledonia's 10-point victory over Granville, the model actually separated them from the rest. So there's a, maybe I'll pull up.
If you want to share your screen, I have it set up.
Yeah,
so if you
it's not quite formatted enough to where I want to share it. Probably would just confuse people more, but so if I'm looking at Division 1, there's a group of teams that are all within 7 points of each other. That's the OAA teams I just mentioned, the OK Red teams I just mentioned, throw in Dakota and throw in Davison. Basically, there's about 6 teams there, but Caledonia has actually separated themselves about 4 or 5 points above them with their victory next week. So, and I think that's really just due, it was a 10-point victory. The model had set it at a 6-point spread. And so you overperform your spread, the model's going to bump you up essentially. So,
wow.
So anyways, going back to my question to you guys, I think D1 would have been the case last week. Caledonia's victory outperformance has really kind of separated them for the time being. The answer is actually Division 6.
I was going to guess a lower division because I was like, it can't be 2, it can't be 3. And I feel like it couldn't be 5. I was going to guess 4 or 6. So yeah, because 7 and 8, I don't feel like there's parity in 7 or 8. Those two divisions are top heavy too, I feel like.
No, you're absolutely right, Vince. So let's start there. On D7 is the most top heavy.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this in our newsletter quite a bit, and it's playing out again this year. And actually, if you look at all the divisions, how far the top team is away from the rest of the teams, it's actually D7 and D8, and D7 in particular, with St. Francis being about. Well, I'll get it here specifically, but St. Francis is about 6 points better than the next team, which is Hudson. So,
wow.
And that's also true in D8 with Whiteford. Our model has Whiteford as the as really the top team there. So, so it's that's where you're seeing the most separation. D6, things are clumped together. So it's the most wide open of the divisions. Again, according to our computer model, but we've got Constantine, Clinton, and actually 2 UP teams all within 1 point of each other. So Negaunee and Gladstone. So,
okay.
But
I
I would.
Nagani made our UP regional rankings, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so it's and it's going to go off on a tangent here. Our computer model is really struggling with the UP teams this year because there has not been too many of them come down and play.
They're all playing Wisconsin schools, aren't they? In Minnesota
right.
and stuff.
So when the teams operate in bubbles, there's no way to compare them, right? They're just and so Nagani and Gladstone are both 5-0. Both really haven't had close games this year, and so they're perhaps getting unfairly bumped up, right? And so we're actually going to really figure out how good they are this week because Gladstone's coming down to play Durand, I believe. So or Durand's going up there. I'm not sure where they're playing the game, but that'll be and Durand's also 5-0. So look out for that.
Oh, it would be a great game.
That should be a good small school matchup. I'm glad you mentioned that because we like always trying to, even outside of the picks that we make, try to mention some games worth checking out, especially smaller division. I feel like people overlook some of those smaller division matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely want to cover all the teams. So,
well, in addition to that, what about, speaking of, we kind of mentioned playoffs there and the season's coming to an end. So far with, only 4 weeks left, how do you feel about your models in terms of, I know you've shared out on Twitter and Instagram some of the success. I don't know if that's how you describe it, like the success rate in terms of the picks and things like that, and kind of the trends. Like, do you feel like they've been pretty successful and you're pretty happy with how it's performed overall this season? Because this is really the first full season I feel like you've been diving headfirst into a lot of different ideas and content you've been putting out in regards to high school football.
Yeah, I've been really, really pleased with how the model's done this year. It's the first time we've set lines and over unders on every game. And, I kind of back tested on 2021's data I wanted to know that I wasn't going to put out, just a completely terrible model. And it was picking in the high 70s, the low 80s, pretty frequently. And so I was like, okay, I'm pretty good with it. I'm good with that. And, our first 2 weeks, we've kind of come out of the gates. I honestly don't think we'll do any better than these first 2 weeks. We picked 81% of games correctly in week 4. And then this last week, we actually did 84%.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Really good. Especially if you consider the sport. I mean, high school football, there's a lot of factors that go into a team. I mean, if one kid gets injured, it could throw off the whole performance of the team. And
we always talk about how if one kid gets like broken up with by his girlfriend or gets sick or something.
I mean, even Vegas for the games that they pick, there's like at the NBA level or something, the teams are a little bit closer match, but they still probably pick at like an 80% rate on the favorite. So that's really impressive. Great job.
Yeah, I don't give me too much credit. It's like Vegas's models are way better, and I don't think there's a whole lot of opportunity to turn this into like a profitable gambling.
Oh, for sure.
But, I was thinking, I was like, hey, I might start sending him my
I don't want to come across as that kind of guy who's so proud of his model. I think a lot of it, it's like talking an 80% here. So I think it's like a very good 80-20 model where it gets you most of the way there. And I've happened to have been very lucky in the first 2 weeks to not a lot of upsets the last 2 weeks. So.
C's get degrees, so you're above that.
80%'s a B. Yeah, 84 is a B. That's a solid B, baby.
Yeah. So we'll take it. Yeah, there's only 40 upsets last week, so which is kind of an interesting stat. So cool. The other interesting stat I've really remarked at, again, another tangent, is we were early on while we were waiting for a couple games to get played so we could do who is the best defense in the state, right? So for a couple of weeks there, everybody had a bunch of shutouts. So you can't, if everybody's only allowed 0 points, it's not really a real defensive ranking. Yeah. So you don't know what else to post. And you're like, well, let's post the number of shutouts that are happening each week. And what I was struck by when I went through the data is there's like 50 shutouts a week in Michigan high school football. There's only 250 games. So it's like 20% of the games, one of the teams doesn't score a point.
I couldn't believe that every single week.
Yeah.
When did you put that in your newsletter? Because I usually read your newsletter almost every week. Is that the most recent one?
No, we did it. We dropped reporting it the last couple of weeks because we've got real defensive stats in there, and I figured it probably wasn't. If it was going to continue to be 50 games a week, probably not that interesting to keep sharing.
Has it continued to be 50 games a week on average?
I only did the first 3 weeks, but I figured it was so, it was like 45 and 52 and 45. And I was like,
that's crazy.
Something that happened.
That is crazy. Yeah.
That is nuts.
I think that goes to something that I don't remember if you talked about it with us, but we've talked about on our podcast is the fact that there's this massive separation over the last 10 years in high school football, at least in the state of Michigan, where it's like, you've talked about it too, where the great teams have gotten greater and there's this huge separation from the great to the good to the average to the bad. Like in between those four types of teams, the divide is enormous, where you might get an average team blow out a bad team, but then a great team blows out a good team, right? It's like there's a lot of separation. I feel like we didn't see that 10, until starting within the last 5 to 8 years. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but I feel like 10 years ago and 20 years ago, that kind of stuff wasn't happening. I feel like there was a lot more parity in general in high school football. I think some of the separations have to do with money and resources, off-season training, recruiting.
We were just texting about this, Vince.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to go back and this would be maybe a heavy lift, but maybe we'll do it this off season when we're kind of doing our more freeform articles. It would be to study exactly that. We could run our model across the last 10 years and see, right now there's this many teams in the top 10 are separated by this many points. What were they separated by 10 years ago?
Right.
And you could sort of prove it with numbers, if that was true.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, kind of moving into the next topic here before we get into our picks for the week. What are what's the horizon looking like here the next few weeks, especially getting into the playoffs? Anything you're willing to share in terms of your ideas or things that might be coming out as we get near playoffs?
I think so. People have been seeing our big thing for the season this year was waiting till we got to week 3 and enough data to train our model on to start setting spreads and over unders for every week. So that's been a new thing for the last 2 weeks, weeks 4 and 5. We're going to continue to do that through the rest of the year. I think a lot of people have seen our content on Twitter and Instagram. That's really centered around that. So just keep plugged into that. That's going to be very exciting. I'm very excited for it. I'm hoping we don't have like a total bomb out week where a model you better off like sticking your finger in the wind or something and that kind of thing. We're going to do around playoff time. We'll be doing our second annual playoff preview guide. That'll be done through our newsletter, but it'll be a long newsletter post. I think that was pretty well received last year. We got a lot of comments that people like the content there. We try to measure, because of the playoff point formula in Michigan and the way things are done, districts are done geographically, we try to center the preview guide around these are where the bracket is the most screwed up, essentially. So you've got, maybe you've got a Division I or the top seed, the second seed, and the third seed all in the same district, right?
Right. That's cool. Interesting. Yeah, that'll be cool to see.
Just try to zoom people into where the best round 1 games are and that sort of thing. I think that's. If you looked at our model right now, Caledonia and Rockford are actually the top 2 teams in D1. And they're only separated by, a few miles, right? So they certainly could be in the same district, right? So you could have
snooze to you this last week has an OK Red district right now. 4 teams from the OK Red. They got Caledonia, Rockford, Granville, and East Kentwood all in the same district from his projections for week 5.
So yeah, that's a great point, Vince. So Granville's our 4th best team, according to the model in D1. Jeez. So you would have the 1, 2 seed and the 4 seed.
All in the same district.
Yeah. So
and that's unfortunate for the state too, because you're really like naturally eliminating your best teams out of the east and the west side of the state.
It's literally happened as long as we've had playoffs, though, because we always do the districts by geography.
There's no other choice. It comes down to a funding thing.
Yeah, because imagine like if year after year you have the number 1 seed driving, the 32 seed driving to the number 1, from year to year, what does that look like? Are they near each other? Are they on opposite sides of the state? And, so on and so forth. I mean, that gets compounded each week, every year. I mean, you don't know where people would have to drive from, which sucks.
I see we make it happen.
Well, but like you're saying right now, Ken, and then you're talking about the 3 of the top teams in Division One all in the same district. Like, but is what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'll be looking forward to that. It'll be cool to kind of see some of those things that you put out.
Yeah. So we're gonna do so the playoff preview and then rankings. Oh, and then so we want to launch our first kind of premium offering. And so I think that'll be twofold. So we're setting lines in over-unders. I've said that a couple times here tonight on every game. We're only kind of publishing the top 10 every week because we just, there'd be a lot of tweets, right? It's 250 games. So one of the things we want to do is make it accessible for those who are interested online for a nominal fee, to kind of see every game and see, you can actually verify that I'm not just bullshitting you about the 84%.
Absolutely. Well, I think people would be interested. I think people would be interested in seeing it. I think it'd be pretty cool.
You heard it here first, folks. Goosepoop is starting the first high school football gambling ring in the country.
Oh boy, there we go.
High school football bookie. That is.
Oh man,
that would great.
Take an NIL to the high school, baby.
I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
It probably will.
Georgia or Texas. They're probably already setting lines unofficially down there and taking bets.
I'm sure.
Oh, for sure.
Well, that's exciting. We'll look forward to when that launches, and we'll absolutely share it out. So anyone listening, make sure if you're, we'll plug them again here at the end, but absolutely make sure you check out Goosepoop on Twitter and Instagram. Subscribe to the newsletter. I try to read it every week. I love getting the email and reading through all the stuff that you got. I'll definitely, if my wife allows it, be willing to pay the fee to if I could sneak that whatever couple dollars, whatever it is in there to help
and
support,
so
help support you.
You got to pay to breathe in your house or what?
My wife's a business manager for a school district, so her job is money. So let's just say that the purse strings are pretty tight.
For you,
is what it is. What it is. Is what it is. All right. Anything else, Kory or Brett? You want to ask Can here, Mr. Poop, before we move into our picks?
I'm all set. Let's get into these picks unless Brett has something.
No, all I got to say is good luck to you, Goosepoop. You and I are both at 18-7 right now.
Oh, boy.
What's better, his model or Brett's brain? We'll find out, folks.
What's going to break first?
So I do want to caution everybody. These are not – so what the picks I've been doing have been actually the playoff wizard users picks.
Oh, okay. So
what I'm going to share tonight, we're not ready to do that because we still got to get a couple more days of those picks in before we have this week's picks. So what I'll share tonight is the model picks. But just to be consistent, to be consistent, we should do the playoff.
Are we playing the over-unders tonight too, or this week?
Yeah, you guys tell me where you want some action.
We're gonna take some under the table action here. So, well, I think what we'll do is we'll do for the sake of the podcast tonight, the episode, we can do the computer picks, and then the user picks is what we'll put out officially when we share out our little graphic here for this week. So, all right, with that, I guess let's get into it here. If you are watching on YouTube, you can see we got the 5 picks up on the screen. If you're just listening on Apple or Spotify, we will talk you through them here. So our first matchup of the week that we picked, which again, as always, we try to pick 5 games, spread out the divisions a little bit, some big, some small, and try to avoid overlap with some of the other high school football pundits on Twitter and things like that. So our first one, we got Charlotte versus Portland. Charlotte coming in at 5-0, Portland 4-1 with a almost last second loss to DeWitt. I think there was 14 seconds left in that game when DeWitt scored right at the very end with a 2-minute drill down the field. So last week I picked first. Who we haven't picked first this week, Kory or Brett?
I can go first. I think we're circling back around to me.
Has Kory Kory picked first?
I picked first.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
All right.
I mean, I'll pick first. You want to hear?
No, I'll go first. I want to. I'll go first.
Brett's had quite a bit of luck picking first, so I think he knows that.
So, like Vince, I think we talked about either before we got on the podcast or just after we got on the podcast with Goosepoop. Charlotte's 5-0. They're 5-0 now for the first time since 2004. So it's been almost 2 decades. Their
Didn't
schedule
they go to a
hasn't.
semifinal or a state championship that year?
It sounds.
The semis to Lowell.
Oh,
yeah. What was that? 2004.
Yeah.
Keith Nickel, quarterback.
Yeah, it's actually, if you look on like the Cal Prep site, that's like the second best Michigan team of all time is that Lowell team. So
Really?
That's a really good team.
Yeah, that was a really good team. But nonetheless, here we are 18 years later. We have a new Charlotte team. These guys were just born that year in 2004. That's some of the juniors and sophomores weren't even born yet. But no, nonetheless, Portland's played a pretty tough schedule this year. Their only loss is a tight loss to DeWitt. I know Kory's gone to a few Portland games this year, but I'm going to pick Portland. I'm going to pick the Raiders over the Orioles.
Cool. I can go next. If you want to wrap us up, Kory, on each one, I'll go in a second. I'm also going with Portland. I just think, like Brett mentioned, the quality of opponent is cool. There's quite a divide there in terms of who Portland has been playing and Charlotte. While Portland does have a few wins over some very average teams, and I was really surprised Sexton almost took down Portland last week. I couldn't believe that, 21-20. They had a scare against Sexton last year too, 35-26. So I don't know what it is about Sexton that Portland has trouble with them, yet they can pull off upsets over DeWitt. Very, very odd, but I'm going with Portland.
You want me to go or Mr. Poop?
We'll have Cannon end us on each one.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to take Portland as well. I don't think it'll be close. Portland has a good team. I mean, they got good backs. They got a good defense. They got a good line. They got a good defense. They got some studs out there. I think they're actually going to get a good guy, a player back who's kind of a stud for them. This week, he had a knee injury a couple weeks ago and sat out the last 3 weeks. So I take Portland.
Yeah, I'm going to fall in line with you guys here. The model has Portland by 10 points. That generally means they have about a 75% chance to win, 80% chance, just based off the last 2 weeks of data. So predicted scores 35-25, Portland over Charlotte. So
it even gives you the projected points. Ooh,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, if you have an over under and you have a spread, you can back into the the score. So
you guys want to know the last time Portland lost to Charlotte?
1978.
Never. They're 6-0 against them. Sorry, trick question there. I tricked you a little bit. So Portland. I just looked. Portland's 6-0 all time against Charlotte via Michigan-football.com.
I got it. Before we move on, because we picked on Charlotte here. We didn't give them a win. Got to give them props. One of the best high school gyms in the state. So great.
Yeah,
gym.
very, very cool gym.
I don't know if I've been to Charlotte's football field. I don't know if I've ever been inside their high school before.
We played.
They have a dome.
Vince, we played basketball in their old gym before.
Yeah, that's past my memory.
That was back when you were 6'1" before you shrunk to 6 foot in 8th grade.
In 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah.
All right. The next game we have here, we thought it would be fun. Brett, Kory, and I are all Grand Ledge grads. Ken is a Lowell grad. We thought it'd be fun to have our hometown teams. And actually, coincidentally, they both do have pretty solid matchups this week. So it does work out. Lowell at 4-1 with their only loss coming to a very good Byron Center team. Seemingly Lowell is a bit rejuvenated this year from their last couple seasons. They've had some rough patches over the last few years. So it looks like at 4-1 that they're finding a stride again. They are faced with quite the task this week, though. They are playing I believe 5-0 Forest Hill Central team, that has had a lot of success over the last 6 years, including a semifinal appearance back in 2017. And they've kind of continued those playoff streaks here. So Brett, what do you got?
Yeah, like you said, it is a rejuvenated Lowell program. Lowell did lose to Byron Center earlier this year, a game where they battled back to make the score the game looked a little bit closer than I think it was. But nonetheless, they're still a good football team. Forest Hill Central, I think, is a little bit better this year. And so I'm going to have to pick my hometown Forest Hill Central Rangers.
I would love to pick Lowell, but I'm also going to go with Forest Hill Central. I'm sure Lowell will make this a pretty competitive game, but Forest Hill Central, I think, is just playing about as well as anyone right now in Division II. They have they got a good win over an OK Red team in Jenison, who's not one of the better OK Red teams, but they blew out Portage Central, Portage Central went to the regional championship last year. So that's a pretty solid win. And then obviously beat Byron Center. So I'm going to go with Forest Hill Central here.
I am also going to take Forest Hill Central. Interesting point total. So Lowell's been putting up a lot of points. They have those 2 games versus Mattawan and Byron Center that were like kind of offset. They allowed a ton of points those 2 games. But Forest Hill Central not putting up as many points, but giving up less points. So it'll be interesting. I think it'll be a really good game. I'm going to take Forest Hill Central.
Yeah, so I'm going to follow suit here. We actually have FHC as an 11-point favorite over the Arrows. Pains me to say that, but
I was going to say
you should know I'm giving you the truth because I'm saying it. So actually, if you look at our D2 rankings that we're going to release tomorrow, De La Salle's the top, obviously, despite their loss to Brother Ice, but actually the only team that's really in their neighborhood in terms of being able to keep close with them is FHC. So we would have FHC as a 4-point underdog to DLS right now. And there's really not a whole lot close below those 2 teams. So I think the next closest team is Mona Shores, and we would favor FHC 10 points over Mona Shores right now. So just I think FHC is a very good team. They have the top defense in D2 according to our computer model. It's the fact that we're projecting Lowell to score 25 points on them. I think is a testament to the turnaround that you guys have talked about at Lowell this year, what they've got going on. But yeah, I don't see a 11-point spread, probably 80% chance that FHC wins.
All right. And next up, we've got me, Brett, and Kory's alma mater, Grand Ledge Comets, playing the crosstown rival conference foe DeWitt Panthers. I am actually going to abstain from picking because I cannot pick this without bias. Of course, I'm going to pick Grand Ledge if I were to make a pick. I coach there, so I would be all in on the Comets because why would I not? We go into every week planning on winning. So the only thing I'm just going to add coming into this is DeWitt right now, not quite the passing attack they've had the last few years with Tommy McIntosh and Ty Holtz, and Flegler, all gone on to Division I schools. They have a hell of a running game right now with Bryce Kearns. And they do have I believe one of their linemen right now committed to Central Michigan. So they do have quite the rushing attack. Grand Ledge, the team that I coached for, we also have 2 Grand Valley commits and a Hillsdale commit. So we do have some firepower. We do score quickly, but we have had a tendency to turn over the ball. So I think it'll be an interesting matchup, and I'm looking forward to the game Friday night. And of course, if I were to make a pick, I would be backing my team because why wouldn't I? We're going to win, baby. But I'm going to abstain.
So with that, it pains me to say too, Grand Ledge hasn't beat DeWitt since 2016, and DeWitt has given Grand Ledge fits in the past decade when they first started playing each other. But as much as I'd love to see the Comets win this game, I got to go with my gut, and my gut is telling me DeWitt's going to win.
Go ahead.
However, I will be rooting for the Comets very hard and streaming them online.
I am also going to take DeWitt. Unfortunately, I just think their strength of schedule is far superior than what Grand Ledge has had this year, which will have them battle tested and ready. So I'm going to take DeWitt. Sorry, Vince.
I mean, they have played a heck of a schedule. They're very much battle tested team. I don't disagree with you.
I'll maybe start my riff with the fact that if you look at who's improved the most over the last 2 weeks in the state, Grand Ledge is actually the 11th best, most improved team over the last 2 weeks, according to the model. So they've jumped their spot up 106 teams. So they've jumped up 20% of the teams. There's 500 teams that play 11-man football. They've gone from, so they made quite the movement, right? So they have momentum behind them. Despite that fact, the model likes DeWitt, and they like DeWitt big here. They like DeWitt by 3 touchdowns. Yeah.
Ouch.
I'll just leave it at that. I don't.
What's the scoring? Give us the score.
45-21. Or
keep them under 45, Vince. You got this.
44-21. Sorry. So.
Big task ahead. Upset coming. Upset coming.
He's saying there's a chance. It's just not a big one.
I just took the weight off your shoulders, Vince.
Guys got nothing to lose.
That's right.
We got a conference. We're in the running for conference championship, so got to win to keep that alive. All right. The next game we have Division I, Division II matchup here with Walled Lake Western, who I believe is 5-0, and a Davison team who is 4-1. Two very good teams that have played a pretty tough. Both of them have played pretty tough opponents. Have a few really good wins. Kory, you want to kick us off here?
Oh, you're switching it up on us.
Or Brett,
shit.
Excuse me. Sorry, Brett. I'm
like, whoa.
My bad.
So Walled Lake Western 5-0, outscoring teams 215-103. They got a running back, Darius Taylor, committed to Minnesota. Davison 4-1, outscoring teams 223-99. I do think that Davison's had a little bit tougher of a schedule, at least from the get-go, playing Clarkston, Detroit Catholic Central, and then Traverse City. This is a non-conference game, so I'm not sure if these teams have played each other in recent history. But nonetheless, I think I'm going to go with Walled Lake Western for my pick.
Wow.
I think Davison, although battle tested, they've had a couple of cupcakes the last 2 weeks. And Saginaw Heritage, who was at the time one of the hottest teams in the state, but they beat him pretty handily. And then Arthur Hill, who they beat 56-0. Walled Lake Western playing a little bit more respectable teams last 2 weeks in Milford and South Line East. So I'm going to go with the Warriors from Walled Lake.
Oh boy. I would like to pick Walled Lake Western, but kind of what to your point you said a moment ago. Davison has played a couple weak teams recently in Arthur. I don't know if I call Heritage weak though. I mean, it was a blowout. They started 3-0 and lost to two really good teams back-to-back weeks here in Davison and Lapeer. But a win over a Clarkston team that is 3-2 with, plays really tough opponents. Detroit Catholic Central, Traverse City Central. I think I got to go with Davison. I bet you it's a close game, but I'm going to pick Davison.
I am also taking Davison for the exact same reasons Vince just mentioned. I think who Davison played so far this year is better than who Walled Lake Western plays in general. So I'm going to take that.
Yeah, so a couple of points. Walled Lake Western is also on our teams of most improved. They haven't improved quite as much over the last 2 weeks as Grand Ledge has, but they're up 70 spots. So probably like team number 30 to improve the most over the last 2 weeks. So they're certainly on the uptrend. Their win over Milford last week in South Line East the week before, like very good wins for them. Davison has actually been, up until this week, been our number one team in the state, despite the loss to Detroit Catholic Central. So the model very much has that as an upset that the Shamrocks pulled over them. It loves their win over Clarkston, their win over Heritage. I think they have another good win in there that I've missed, but certainly last week with Heritage's loss to Lapeer, their stock has started to slide. How much have they slid? They slid by about 12 from the top overall team in the state to, number 12 overall team in the state. So not by much. All that to round out, the model still likes Davison here by 8 points. So but momentum maybe says it's going to be a little closer than that. So,
and with that, let's get into the last game of the week here. We have Zeeland West versus Muskegon Mona Shores. Probably got to be, up there with, the best of the matchups this week around the state. You have a Zeeland West team who is absolutely pummeling teams right now at 5-0. And then obviously Mona Shores, a lot of success in Division II, over the last several years. Brett, what are you thinking here for this one?
So this is a battle of two of probably the most consistent teams on the west side of the state over the last decade. You have a Zeeland West squad that runs a wing T and has just been destroying teams this year. With outside of the game at Muskegon or against Muskegon last week, which they won 38-36. But that's by far the best team they've played. Zeeland West and Mona Shores both have a common opponent in Holland, who discontinued their season, I believe, after the Zeeland West game. Zeeland West beat Holland 56-0, and Mona beat Holland 69-0. However, I'm putting a lot of stock in Mona Shores lost to Rockford. That was a game that Mona Shores probably should have won at Rockford.
Blowing them out in the second half.
Yep, that's a game they probably should have won at Rockford, and they also beat a really solid and revitalized Union program last week, 64-14. So my pick is going to be Mona Shores over Zeeland West.
Yeah, that Rockford game is very interesting because, as Cannon was saying, Rockford in his models, very highly regarded, and a lot of people regard them very highly. And Rockford was on the ropes in that game and just found a way to pull out a crazy win. I think at one point it was 27-7, and then Rockford got a safety. I think a punt got snapped to the back of the end zone by Mona Shores, and then it was all Rockford from there. They scored something like 29 and I think it was 24-7. Actually, I think Mona Shores might have snuck in a field goal. It was just a crazy comeback, and as much as I'd like to pick Zeeland West, their win over Muskegon last week in most years I think would be a big time win. I'm not saying Muskegon is bad by any means, but Muskegon is definitely not having a traditional season up to their standards with 2 losses. Now they got blown out by a really good De La Salle team, but they almost got beat by East Kentwood, who is, a solid team in the OK Red, but not one of the better ones. So I think I'm going to go with Mona Shores for this one as well.
Oh boy, I'm in a pickle. I got to make up room, but I don't necessarily think the Ducks can do it. Where's this game at? Any idea?
It's at Zeeland West.
I'm taking Zeeland, baby. Come on, Ducks, bring me home. The Ducks fly together. Quack, quack, quack. Okay, I'm done.
So this is actually probably one of the closest games in the state, according to the model this weekend. The model has Zeeland West as a 1-point favorite.
Wow.
Which is essentially a pick 'em. It's like a coin flip with the once you get really within a spread of 4 points with our model. So it's and honestly with the momentum behind Shores, their rankings certainly rising with their recent results, and the model probably would have had Zeeland West pause their outcome in the first quarter of last week with Muskegon. I think they're up like 28-0 or 21-0. They probably would be in the top 5 of the state overall. So they certainly took a ding in the model this last week with their outcome at Muskegon. So it's a little tough to I think Pickham's fairly rated. I think both these teams are underrated by the model right now. Hackley's a tough place to play. Weird things happen there. And Mona is getting unfairly dinged by their loss to Rockford, which I would argue that they should have won the game. So, great game.
So as you said the pick'em was for Zeeland West. Okay, that's what I thought you said.
Yeah, it's essentially pick'em, but it's like Zeeland West 30-29.
Oh, jeez.
Well, all right. Anything else you guys want to add before we wrap this up? It looks like Brett can make some headway with his Walled Lake Western pick, and Kory could possibly make some headway with the Zealand West pick.
No spicy poops for me.
Right now, I'm on my way to the hot wing challenge here. Still some games left, though. We're going through the state title game, so a lot
I was
of
gonna say we've
football
got like 100
8
games
weeks
left. Yeah.
Well,
So-
7 weeks after this one.
So we're
So
gonna have
then-
to, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Ken. Go ahead.
We're gonna have to switch Goosepoop's picks once the playoff wizard is.
That's true.
So
We'll post his picks.
yeah.
We'll have to, for Vince's null pick of the week, we'll have to think of something. You have to think of something, Vince. Maybe you'll pick an extra game next week.
All right, that's fair.
Or you could pick an extra game this week. What's the
Or
top
if you
game in
beat,
the
or if you beat DeWitt, we'll give it to you as a W.
No, Cannon, what's the
Oh.
top game in the state? Let Vince pick it.
Well, I mean, like I said, technically I would pick Grand Ledge, but I just feel like that's an
Yeah, you can't
That's
pick a game that you
it's-
participate in.
right. It's
Yeah.
biased. Like, of course I'm going to pick Grand Ledge. I coach there. I'm going into every week that I coach planning to win.
You're
you
going
know.
to be the mayor there someday.
Mayor of Grand Ledge, right?
Hey, we have the guy here. He's going to tell you what game you're picking, Vince. So get ready.
So the top. Let me just verify that the top game in the state. Let me just hit this. Pretty sure I know what it is, but I won't confirm. Yeah. So I mean, the model is, the way we select our top games is the best overall teams playing. So that almost always means it's a D1 or a Catholic or a CHSL team, and maybe a D2 or D3 will slip in at the bottom of the game number 5 or game number 4. So the top game in the state this week is Granville and Rockford.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right. Are you just putting whoever's typing right now? Oh yeah, just put that below. Perfect. Does anyone have up where that game is at? I think last year it was at Granville, so I think that game's at Rockford. I'm pretty sure.
I can tell you here right now that game is at Granville. No,
Oh.
sorry, it's at Rockford. It's at
I was gonna
Rockford.
say I thought it was at Granville last
Yep.
year. Okay.
Yep.
Oof. Oh man. I think I'm just gonna have to go with Rockford. I would like to try and pick Granville as like an upset for that one, as I'm sure Rockford's the favored team. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Rockford. Rockford Rams. As much as I would like to pick the dogs, I'm just thinking Rockford is gonna beat them.
Yeah. Just for fun, we've got Rockford by 4.
Oh, that's a pretty close game.
To pick them.
With a ton of points. I think the final score is 43-39. Yeah.
Well, last year, I think it was something like that, wasn't it? 53-46
Yeah, we've got
last year in like 3 or 4 overtimes.
43-39 is what the model has as the final. So
Well, all right. I think that.
You gotta add your pick, Vince.
Oh, am I just typing it down below?
Yeah.
No,
Add it in the chart.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Beautiful.
And I'll put an asterisk next
People
to
are
it.
going to be like, why the hell did he pick Rockford?
This guy's a nut.
This guy's an idiot.
They're not even playing DeWitt this week.
Well, I mean, you got the little asterisk thing on the bottom
Yeah, I
here.
know. I'm just shit talking.
All right. I think that's about going to wrap it up, unless anyone has anything else they'd like to add here before we let Cannon go when we wrap this up.
Thank you for
Excited-
joining, and we're excited for the remainder of your content and to see where it can go.
thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Always.
Exciting to This is the best third of the season right here. The last third of the regular
yeah.
season in high school football. A lot of big games coming up. A lot of big games.
Especially with the current playoff format. It's not like it used to be where, hey, 6 games and you're in. Now teams with 6 and I think, was anyone left out with 7 wins last year? 6-win teams were left out of the playoffs. If you won 7 games, you were in, I think.
I don't think there'll be a 7-win, or there was a 7-win last year. I think there was a
7-2 team and last year didn't make it.
I don't think there was.
Oh, you don't think there was? Okay. I would say I thought I figured out by the math, by the playoff points, that if you win 7 games, you're in. But I even thought I figured it out that almost 6 wins at the Division I level for the most part, because every 6-win team in D1 made it last year. I even think every 6-win team in Division II made it. I think it wasn't until like D3 or D4 where 6-win teams started missing the playoffs.
At the lower levels, there's some you would miss it if you there's teams that could miss if they won 7 games.
And then you had a 2-7 team and a 3-6 team make the playoffs.
Well, I haven't checked in on Lumen Christi, but I would they could. I did do a computer model for Lumen Christi yesterday, and like they came out as the top seed in D7 with a 3-6 record, something like that. So they
had a hell of a non-conference schedule. I mean, Traverse City, St. Francis, and New Lothrop.
Yeah.
Well, we will have to keep in touch here. Hopefully get you back on to talk high school football we'll have to communicate and see maybe during the playoffs, or if we want to wait till the end of the season at some point. Could be fun. Maybe high school preview, playoff preview. We'll stay in touch and see what we can do.
Absolutely, guys. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for coming on. And if you're listening or watching, make sure you stay on, as we're going to continue here with our college picks of the week, as well as recapping our picks from last week. And I hope you enjoyed our conversation there with Goosepoop regarding everything high school football here in the state of Michigan through 5 weeks, just over the halfway point in the regular season. If you're watching on YouTube and you like that flawless transition, but you're very confused by our change in clothes, it's because the first half and second half of this podcast were recorded on different nights. Your eyes are not playing tricks on you, but hopefully you didn't even notice the difference if you were just listening. With that, we are going to transition into the college ranks here from around the state of Michigan last week, as well as talking for a little bit about the Lions, and then we'll wrap things up with Kory's recommendation of the week. So first thing is first, we need to First thing is first. We got to talk about our picks from last week. See how we did. All right. And then I got to remember, I figured out, I just told these guys, if you've been watching on YouTube, I figured out that apparently on Zoom, when you share your screen, it automatically puts our faces in the top right corner, and I have no control over that. So hopefully that is good enough. I guess we'll find out when I go to put this in the
all 22 of our fans will bitch about it on
10
YouTube.
Fans, watch it. All right, so last week we had 5 games that we picked as our games to watch for the week, the games that we thought were worth checking out and paying attention to from teams around the state from different divisions. We had an NAIA matchup, a matchup of MSFA mid-state football teams in Siena Heights, number 7 ranked Siena Heights, at number 16 St. Francis. We unanimously picked. Or excuse me, Siena Heights is not number 7. Concordia is currently number 7. I think I added that in there. That's my bad. Siena Heights is not ranked right now. Siena Heights is unranked. Siena Heights went to St. Francis, who has had a lot of success in NAIA and won 19-14. I was pretty surprised by this score here. I don't know if you guys
St. Francis won
about it.
St. Francis won, not Siena Heights.
Yeah. Oh, did I say Siena Heights?
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. Yeah. St. Francis won against Siena Heights. Siena Heights got beat 19-14. I was very surprised by this this score. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add by it, but I think it pretty impressive by Siena Heights, who isn't necessarily right now, their record isn't necessarily pointing to them going on the road and against a really quality opponent, just about pulling out the win. I mean, they get one more touchdown, they win the game.
I'm excited to see how this NAI league turns out this year. Once these teams start playing each other, obviously Concordia is receiving votes, but Siena Heights seems pretty tough, and then obviously Madonna's Madonna at this point. But we'll see how it plays out.
I thought it was really, I don't know if that game was played in an absolute rainstorm or what, but Siena Heights had 168 yards of total offense, and St. Francis had 189 yards of total offense. So not a real fun game to watch, but it makes defensive coordinators like yourself, Vince, very proud. Gets you hard. That's a defensive game there.
So I got to make a correction here that I just looked up. I was looking at their schedule.
That's strike 3, Vince.
They play two straight St. Francis teams. Excuse me. They had St. Xavier last week. I didn't put that ranking in there. That was somebody else. I am deleting it, though, because there's 2 different St. Francis's. So they just played at St. Francis out of Joliet, Illinois. Next week, they play St. Francis from Indiana, who is now ranked number 22 in the nation. They were ranked 16 last week. So 2 different St. Francis teams, NAIA schools. Very confusing there here in the Midwest.
Wow, that is confusing.
And
Siena Heights?
What's that?
Siena Heights.
What about them? So we apologize for our ineptitude, our incompetence when it comes to NAIA football. We're trying our best. We've talked about it before that we're not the most up to date on NAIA football, but we would like to try and highlight it because we do have 4 teams now in the state of Michigan here. So we're doing our best. It's a lot of football to keep track of with our day-to-day jobs on top of it. But yeah, Siena Heights went on the road in Joliet, Illinois, and lost by 6 points. They are now 1-2 overall.
Last week they played Francis, and this week they play Saint Francis.
I know, that's what I was going to say. The way they're stylized online is it's ST Francis, and then next week is spelled out SAINT Francis, which is very confusing. So I knew there was a good St. Francis. The next one, so I have a feeling that's the one they'll probably get beat by, unfortunately. And they got beat by St. Xavier by 3 points. So they played a really tough St. Xavier team close too, but be curious to see how that plays out. The next game, we had number 23 Albion, who actually moved up in the rankings in the coaches poll this week to number 20. Went on the road to Wisconsin Eau Claire and won 28-20. Kory picked Albion to get beat, and Brett and I picked the Brits to come out on top. So Brett and I got this one. I want to point out something here about the Wisconsin Conference. I just checked. There are 4 teams from the Wisconsin Conference ranked right now. 4. And another one receiving votes. That's incredible. I think there's only 6 or 7 teams in that conference.
Like Kory always says, there's no D2 programs in Wisconsin.
Right. Whitewater is ranked like number 3 or 4 in the nation. Wisconsin lacrosse, I believe, was number 9 or 10. There was somewhere right around there. Oshkosh and River Falls, I believe it was, were both ranked, and then Platteville was receiving votes. So 5 teams ranked, or 4 teams ranked, 1 receiving votes. Very, very impressive there.
So Wisconsin Whitewater, this is getting a little off tangent, but so they had a head coach, Lance Leipold. He went 109-6 there from like 2015 to 2020 or 2019 or something. And then he went over to Buffalo and was head coach at Buffalo. Now he's at Kansas, and Kansas is 4-0 this year, and they should have been ranked in the top.
Wait. That's who the new head coach at Kansas is the guy from Whitewater?
Yeah, he's 64 years old, and he's at Kansas now, and he's absolutely turned the program around. They were winless for a number of years, borderline winless, and they went 2-10 last year, and they're 4-0 so far this year with some big upsets. So they're probably going to make a bowl this year. I mean, they only need 2 wins in the rest of the Big 12, which they'll get. And rumors are that he's going to be a top candidate for the Nebraska job, but I don't see Nebraska hiring a guy who'll be 65 this time next year. But
That's
nonetheless,
absurd.
small
Good for him,
world.
man.
Good for him. It gives
Good for him, man.
it makes good coaches in like the D3 and D2 level. Tony Anise comes to mind. That guy's been a winner everywhere he's been.
Right.
So you just wonder if he'll ever get his shot or if he wants that shot.
That's incredible.
He's getting his chickens, dog.
This chickies. But yeah, Vince, for this game, Albion winning 28-20.
It's a big win.
Shout out to my brother's girlfriend,
Huge win.
Megan, who, when they were driving to Penn State last week for the Central Penn State game, I guess her ears perked up because we all said Wisconsin Eau Claire wrong. I forget how she said it. We're supposed
Yeah, how
to
is that pronounced?
Daddy, isn't it Eclair? I think it's Eclair.
Yeah, I think that's what she said.
I
it
had
was.
no idea. Yeah, because isn't it French?
It's Wisconsin
Yeah.
Eclair.
Pretty sure that's the home of Menards.
Eau Claire.
Eau
Claire.
Claire.
I'm pretty sure it's
Eau Claire.
the home of Menards. That's where Menards started.
Interesting.
But nonetheless,
Saving money on my nards. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
But nonetheless, Albion's had a pretty good football season so far, and it's led by Mark Taco. Mark Taco, wide out for Albion, has been on our top 5 performances for receiving just about every week now, and they can't seem to stop him. He's got a touchdown just about every game, over 100 yards receiving every game. The guy seems like a machine, and I was just looking into it. He played basketball a little bit at Albion too. I don't think he's playing basketball anymore, but it seems like a pretty good athlete.
They are currently outscoring opponents 180-39 in 4 games, Albion, averaging 45 points a game. Pretty impressive stuff.
Pretty
Well,
good.
they win the MIAA.
Yes.
You think so?
Well, they win a
It's them or
playoff
hope.
game.
This is them or hope.
I'll be curious to see how it plays out. We've talked about it quite a bit that the MIAA is going to be interesting because you got 4 teams at 4-0, 3 at 3-1 right now. Obviously Albion plays at Kalamazoo this week. A Kalamazoo team that's 3-1, lost their first game last week by a score out in New York. They flew out to New York. It was Anderson is the school they played and lost. I think it was like 31-23, pretty close game. So be curious to see
Is Anderson any good?
I'm not sure. I did not see what their record was, but I would say anytime you got in Division III, go all the way from Michigan to New York, that's going to be a mental challenge in and of itself, I would say.
True.
But I have not had a chance to look and see what kind of a team that Anderson is. But anyway, MIAA heating up here. We're going to talk about another one of those games in just a second here. The next game from last week that we had was Saginaw Valley at Michigan Tech. Brett and I both picked Michigan Tech to upset Saginaw Valley. Kory went with the Cardinals, and the Cardinals pulled it out pretty handily. Saginaw Valley with an impressive 35-13 win at a battle-tested Michigan Tech. We talked about it. Michigan Tech went to Division I AA school, St. Thomas in Minnesota, and lost there. Went down to Texas, lost to a ranked Midwestern State team in Texas. So they beat, I think, didn't they play one of the Wisconsin schools too? One of the Division III Wisconsin schools and win? Or no, I'm trying to remember who their one win was because I think Tech has one victory. I guess
D3 school, Wisconsin.
Was one of the D3 schools in Wisconsin?
Yeah. I could tell you on here.
Yeah, I was going to try and pull up the schedule.
It's on our viewing guide.
Yeah, I think it was week 1.
Yeah,
it was
week 1.
Platteville. It was Platteville who is receiving votes in the top 25. So they beat a really good team. Any thoughts on this game? Pretty impressive win for Saginaw Valley.
I think Saginaw Valley's got something brewing with that new coach.
4-0.
Yep. Got him from the Ferris State tree.
Yeah.
And I saw they have a D1 transfer at quarterback too.
They have a D1 transfer at wideout too. Ernest Sanders, the 4th. He's from Kentucky.
That helps.
Saginaw Valley, this win got them all the way up to 17th in the nation. We'll talk about them and their game coming up in a little bit here.
Their quarterback, Andrew Brito. Where was he from, Kory?
You'd have to look it up, but I saw it on Twitter. What's his name?
Andrew Brito. I got it right here. But yeah, in very Michigan Tech like fashion, they had less than 50 rushing yards on the game. He's from Central Florida.
Yep.
Yeah, usually they run the ball pretty well.
Yeah, he played quarterback down at Central Florida.
Yeah, interesting.
He looked like a small guy based on what I saw.
Yeah, he's 5'11".
Yeah.
But I mean, he puts up some decent numbers. He's got a pretty good completion percentage on the season. He had 80% last week.
Which if you can sling the rock, you can sling the rock. So
yeah. But no, big win for Saginaw Valley. A little bit foreshadowing, but Battle of Valleys this upcoming week will be interesting.
Talk about them in just a second again here. All right. The next game is not one I was looking forward to talking to, but inevitably we are going to have to talk about it because we picked Michigan State hosting Minnesota last week. They were number 21 in the coaches poll. I checked. They're still receiving votes in the coaches poll, but they dropped out at 2-2. Anyone who watched that game, even if you just look up the stats, I watched probably maybe half of it. I was busy, had some other things going on, so I didn't get to watch the first half. I followed mostly the second half, but 34-7, Minnesota wins at Michigan State for the first time since 2006. And it was the first time they beat Michigan State, period, since 2009.
And it wasn't close at all.
It wasn't even close. 34-7, absolute blowout fashion. PJ Fleck, in his return to Spartan Stadium, last time he was there, he was coaching Western Michigan.
And a debut.
It was his debut, was at Michigan State. And
what do you guys think about this? If PJ Fleck stays at Western Michigan for 2-3 more years, is he the head coach at Michigan State?
I don't know. I feel like programs like Michigan and Michigan State don't like to make hires like that. They like to hire somebody that, is
kind of removed from the Big Ten, I feel like.
Or has experience as like a OC at a big program. Like, I don't know. I can't think of the last time somebody was hired from a mid-major to Michigan or Michigan
State. Also, at least the last two coaches seems to go for a trend of a coach who was associated with the program previously. Yeah. Like D'Antonio worked at Michigan State under Saban. Mel Tucker worked at Michigan State under Saban, right? I mean, so you get these coaches like that who have some association or some connection at some point. Maybe they didn't go to school there, but maybe some sort of coaching connection. So I don't know. It's very disappointing to say the least as a Michigan State fan. I would have not been surprised at all if Minnesota beat them, but to be beaten like that at home after losing ugly on the road, the Washington State, to me, I could,
Washington.
Or Washington.
I was listening to another podcast this week, and some guy made the same mistake. I don't know what it is.
Dude, those two teams, I don't like. To me, like
one's red, one's purple.
Right.
They played for the Apple Bowl.
Right. There's like there or whatever to me. Anyway, they went over to Washington, got beat. Whatever. Like I get it. That's a big time road loss, Power 5 school to a meh Power 5 school, but okay, one time. But then to turn around and come home and play even worse against a team you haven't lost to in 13 years. And I don't want to take anything away from PJ Fleck or Minnesota because I think that they're pretty legit. We talked about last week, they may win the West. And a lot of people are talking about that right now. They may win the West and be playing for the Big Ten title against Ohio State or Michigan. But yeah, I don't know. Michigan State better figure out something quick because like I texted these guys, or maybe I was talking to you guys about it Monday night. I don't know if Michigan State wins more than 4 or 5 games.
They're lucky they scored 7 points in that game. And my question is, at one point, do you bench Peyton Thorne and put Hamp Fay in? I mean, something's got to change.
Or Noah Kim. Or
Peyton Thorne sucks.
What's the other guy's name?
He had
Peyton Hauser or whatever.
Peyton Thorne had first off, Michigan State couldn't run the ball. Michigan State's leading rusher is Jarek Broussard with 23 yards rushing. That's bad.
It's really bad.
But Peyton Thorne also had
4 turnovers.
And he threw for only 132 yards, no touchdowns, but he had a 71% completion percentage. So he must just be dumping the ball down.
It was just an all-around miserable game, miserable performance, and I don't.
It'll be interesting to see this week what they do against Maryland. I posted on our Twitter page. I made a mistake. I said Albion and Michigan State. Actually, Albion had 2 interceptions week 1. I had that recorded. I just overlooked it when I put the stat out. I was really excited to post that on Twitter that only 2 teams in the state hadn't had an interception this year. Well, the answer is just Michigan State doesn't have an interception this year. They're the only college and pro team in the entire state without an interception this year. And they get to play Maryland this week with Tua's younger brother, Talia. I do think Michigan State gets the interception off their back this week. Talia can be a little erratic with the ball, but nonetheless, their passing defense is terrible, and Scott Hazelton needs to get fired. They've gotten worse from last year to this year.
Who?
Michigan State. Scott Hazelton's
yes. Sorry.
the DC
Yes.
at Michigan State.
Yes.
Yeah, just inexcusable. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on them anymore. Michigan State's really frustrating right now, and I have even lower. I didn't have very high expectations coming to the season. Like, I optimistically thought they'd win 7 or 8 games. I thought 8 was their ceiling. I thought it was more likely they'd only win 7. I figured they wouldn't be nearly as good as they were last year. I think that was kind of a fluke with just Kenneth Walker was lightning in a bottle, and a lot of things went their way. A lot of things, fell their way. A lot of kind of surprises for them. And so I figured, they'll be lucky to win 7 games this year. Now I don't even know if they're going to make a bowl game. Like, I'm thinking 4 or 5 wins at best. So not good. See. They got a lot of work to do. It's not good. It's ugly. Last game of the week is another one that's really tough to talk about. Not as tough as Michigan State, but still a hard pill to swallow. The Detroit Lions, we unanimously picked Detroit to win at Minnesota. It was a really good pick because, man, Detroit was dominating that game for the whole first half and even into the third quarter. I think it was 24-14 going into the fourth quarter, I believe. So Minnesota ended up winning 28-24. Didn't they score 14 unanswered fourth quarter points? It was 24-14 at the start of the fourth.
We absolutely Lionsed that game.
Yeah, Kory, how's that atmosphere up there?
It was really
sorry, I guess we should add for everyone listening or watching. I think we said at the very beginning of this episode, but Kory was at this game in Minnesota.
Yeah, so US Bank Stadium, one of a kind, gorgeous, 6 years old. Really good production, really good show that Minnesota put on. So they had DJ Ski start off the game. He was on the turntables. He actually had it live in there. It was a lot of fun. And then they do a big pregame production. And then they do their goofy skull chant, which is kind of eerie to me. But other than that, it was
cult.
It's terrifying.
Skull.
But then Lions just from the jump were kicking the crap out of them. So it was amazing to watch.
Great. But that's I feel like what drives me nuts about the Lions. But I will say that under Dan Campbell, I feel like they feel like they're closer than ever, at least these first 3 games. Now, and I feel like we got to temper expectations here because they only won 3 games last year. They won 3. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people, I was actually talking to my grandma about this today because my grandma loves the Lions, but I feel like people are getting lost in the hype train of the Hard Knocks, right? And the draft class. Mm-hmm. Right. I feel like people shouldn't expect the Lions to come out and win 10, 11, or 12 games. Right. We even said it on the podcast before the season that we would be excited if they won 7 to 9. We guessed 7 to 9, right? In that range, 7, 8, or 9. That's still on the table. They have 1 win already. They didn't have 1 win through 3 games last year. They didn't have 1 win through 9 games or 8 games, whatever it was last year. And I think they very easily will win a couple more games here very soon. They'll match the 3 wins from last year very early in the season. I'm confident of that. Now, is it frustrating because they absolutely should have won it in Minnesota and be sitting at 2-1 right now? For sure. But I feel like they're in better hands than ever before. They have a lot of talent. I feel like there's a lot of things going on in terms of administration and ownership and people in charge, not even just Dan Campbell, that seem to be a much better environment and productive franchise. But I could also be completely wrong. I just, that's the feeling I get, the vibe I get. I don't know if you guys agree or not.
The one thing that I really like about Dan Campbell is that he is preaching this winning culture where I feel like all of our coaches of the past were never really preaching that. And Dan Campbell's bringing it to light, saying, look, you guys don't know how to win here. And that's what we need to learn how to do. And that's what all of his coaches are trying to instill, which you saw in Hard Knocks. And we got to instill winning into this team and into this franchise, then we will win games. It's not going to happen overnight. But I felt like a lot of other coaches, it was never really talked about. It was just like insinuated, like, okay, we got to win. Like, okay, that's super easy to do. Like at Ferris State, had a decent winning culture, but then towards the end of what's his name's career,
Pierce.
Coach Pierce's career, like they had lost that winning culture, and now like Tony Anise has Ferris State just winning every year.
They won 69-3 last week, and Malik Mitchell hasn't played in like 3 weeks.
Yeah. So I think Dan Campbell's doing the right things. I'm hopeful, but now we're sitting in this situation. We'll talk about it here in a bit that we're injury prone and have nobody that can play right now.
I will go on record and say I will just be happy if they win, if they get close to 500, 7-9 games. I feel like too many people were expecting the world, right? Like all of a sudden they were going to win 12, 10, 11, 12, or 13
Super Bowl
games. Yeah, no, I feel like people got so caught up in the Hard Knocks thing. He is literally laying the foundation. This is year 2. And last year was like bottom barrel. He's ripping the roots out and starting from scratch. It's going to take 3 or 4 years. It just is. Again, I will be happy if they double or triple their wins this year. If they get between 7 and 9 wins, color me happy.
So state of Minnesota 1, state of Michigan 0.
Yes.
2-0.
Yeah. Well, if it makes you feel any better,
3-0 if you take St. Thomas, Minnesota over Michigan Tech.
Yeah. if it makes you feel any better, the Minnesota Twins had a 12-game lead on the AL Central on September 4th, and they blew that lead.
12-game lead.
Yeah, and they blew it. They blew it in like 20 days.
Oh my gosh,
they do that every year though.
Yeah. So now the Cleveland Guardians won the Central. But yeah, I guess just a couple other things this week. I went down to the Central Penn State game down in Happy Valley. Awesome stadium. Beaver Stadium, you can see from like 2-3 miles away. It just towers over everything. It sits in a valley of the Appalachian Mountains. It was a pretty cool atmosphere, I thought. Obviously, Penn State had just come off a big win against Auburn. This was Penn State's only second home game. It was a beautiful day for a football game, but Central stayed with them. It was 14-14 at one point in the game. Central made a couple mistakes. They had 2 touchdowns get called back from penalties, and they also ended up with 4 turnovers. But nonetheless, the Chips fought hard. I think it exposed Penn State a little bit. With Penn State being Auburn, an SEC school on the road, everyone's like, oh, Penn State's great. They're going to be fantastic. But now watching them, they only put 33 points up on a pitiful Central defense. So I'm still not sold on the Nittany Lions. But nonetheless, it was a fun game to go to. Another score that jumped out on me this past week that we didn't talk about was Alma-Scott Nation got laid this week, 69-0 over Martin Luther. They're rolling right now. The Scots are rolling.
They're 4-0, and they're playing a 4. Well, we're going to talk about this in a second. Playing a 4-0 Trine team this week.
They got a Reetma on their hands coaching there now.
Do they really? Is that who's
their coach? The oldest son is coaching there now.
We should also mention the MIAA.
6-1.
Almost went undefeated again. The only MIAA loss was Kalamazoo had their first loss of the year out in New York at Alfred University by 8 points. So the MIAA, man, we got 3 4-0 teams, 4 4-0 teams, and 3 3-1 teams. Going to be an interesting race in that conference.
Sure will. Starting up this week too.
Conference play.
But yeah, just to quickly wrap up last week. Top passing performances: Tyler Coco from Lawrence Tech. That's a name that's been on the list a few times now. 382 yards, 4 touchdowns, 75% completion percentage. I was looking up he's on a couple of draft boards right now. Which is kind of interesting. Tyler Kolka from Lawrence Tech. He's got an NFL.
Shit.
Yeah, he's got a profile on NFL Draft Combine. So that was really interesting to see this week from NAIA quarterback. But he's had some great numbers throughout this year. I don't think he has a ton of support on the defensive side of things. Rushing What?
Sorry, I was just going to say, talk about a learning curve. Could you imagine going NAIA to NFL? It would be like,
I wonder how many
I don't even know how to
NAI
explain it.
players over the last 10 years because the NAI, I feel like a lot of people don't realize the NAI was actually pretty big back in the day until the NCAA split into 3 divisions because the NAI was established for small colleges and small universities. That was the whole point. Was it was an alternative option for sports outside the NCAA if you were a small college or university. But then when the NCAA split up into before they had divisions, and then once the NCAA decided to split into multiple, technically 4 divisions with FCS, then it gave small colleges and universities, oh, now we can compete in Division 2 or Division 3. And so the NAI is now down to like, I don't even think it's 100 football schools. I want to say it. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, sorry.
Interesting fact, Finch. So just talked about passing last week's top rushing performance. Blake Corum from Michigan with the big game, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. Olivet with their 3rd running back that's cracked our top 5 performances, and Samuel Kaniji. Very powerful run game coming out of Olivet. Another one that was on the list, a repeat lister, is Tariq Reed, running back from Grand Valley. Moving on to wide receivers, Isaac Tesla from Hillsdale back at the top of the list. This is a potential NFL player in my mind. Maybe not quite fast enough, but I watched him play last year down at Hillsdale I think as a redshirt freshman last year, and you can just tell that this guy is good. You can just watch him in warm-ups. He's just smooth, like butter, can catch a ball, soft hands, high points.
They went down to Missouri and got a win this week. They're sitting atop the GMAC at 3-1, tied with Ashland.
Could you lock him up, Brett?
Could I lock him up?
Yeah.
No, but I'd knock his lights out if he came across the middle and didn't see me coming.
Brett and I would get a lot of 15-yard penalties if we played football nowadays.
Oh yeah, I probably would. Yeah,
I'd
get a lot of targeting penalties.
I would have been ejected from games.
From the defensive side of things, there's only one guy in the whole state with 2 picks last week. That's Cortland Cochra from Madonna. We got a lot of love from his camp on Twitter, so shout out Cortland Cochra. Top offensive performances. Adrian, 73 points, almost 500 yards. Total offense. Finlandia. Now that's a program I don't like to talk negatively about a lot of programs, but that's a program that just
they need to cancel it.
Oh man.
just if there's any Finlandia people listening, I'm sorry, but in 4 games, 52-7, 45-7, 55-0, 73-13. That's unbelievable. How does that happen?
They had negative 2 yards of total offense last week.
How did they get 13 points? How the hell did they get 13 points?
It must be defense. No, 2 weeks ago. Sorry, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
This past week they had 121 yards of offense. But I mean, it's got to be a tough place to recruit, but it's I give credit to the guys that walk out there every single week and perform. You know, I'm
52-0 at halftime, guys.
Doing the stats, they have like a different passing, rushing, and receiving leader every week. So I don't know if they're just rotating through guys or what it is. But on the more positive side of things, Alma is continuing to roll their number 2 offensive performance this week, 530 yards total offense, 69 points, followed by Ferris, Olivet, and Hope. On the defensive side of things, Alma also had a shutout this past week. They got the donut. And then Ferris State gave up 3 points, followed by Hope, Olivet, and GVSU for the top defensive performances in the state. So pretty solid week. It's going to be interesting over the next few weeks while teams are playing similar competition in conference play to see how these stats kind of adjust and see who ends up separating themselves as a top performer in the state.
And with that, do we want to get into our picks for this week?
Do it.
All right. So this week we have 5 games that we think you should pay attention to all across all divisions here in the state of Michigan. Our first one is a Big Ten matchup that we're pretty excited about here. I'm pretty positive it's going to be a blowout. How did we start the high school picks the other night? That was Kory, me, and then Brett, or was it Brett, me?
No, I went first.
Do you want to kick us off for college too, Brett?
Yeah, for sure.
Michigan and Iowa. Who you got?
Tough game, Kinnick Stadium. But I think the Wolverines are going to prevail just because I was got the number one. Well, Iowa has the number one defense in all FBS and the worst offense in all FBS. So talk about two just completely polar opposite sides of things. I can't imagine what the offense does in practice when it's one-on-one. I don't even know if they can get a first down, but I'm going to go Michigan.
I am also picking Michigan. I think I was utterly miserable offensively, and Michigan will find a way to outscore them. It's just it might be a low scoring game, but Michigan will still score points.
Michigan is an 11-point favorite at this point in time, and I think Michigan will win, and I will take the over.
All right, our next game is a battle of unbeaten GLIAC schools, Battle of the Valleys, right? Isn't that what they usually title this game?
Battle of the Valleys.
Saginaw Valley versus Grand Valley. Pretty big time rivalry that has been a bit more lopsided. I feel like in recent years, Saginaw Valley hasn't been quite as strong in recent years as they maybe have been before.
Jeff Janis years.
Right. They've had some years here and there, but Grand Valley's dominated lately. Number 2, Grand Valley, hosting number 17, Saginaw Valley. Battle of Unbeatens. Brett, who you got? Oops.
I'm going to go with my Lakers. It's in Lover Stadium. That place is going to be bumping. It's going to be a beautiful night on Saturday evening. I think Grand Valley is just more talented across the board.
I am also going to pick GVSU. I think Saginaw Valley will be as competitive as they can be, but I've seen no reason to doubt Grand Valley at this point.
I agree with both of you. I think Saginaw Valley is going to go in there with a little bit of swag, but they're going to get curb stomped by GVSU.
All right. And our next game is a battle of a couple of our NAIA schools in the Midwest here. Number 15, Concordia is 1-2 right now, but still ranked 15 in the coaches poll in NAIA. Going to number 9, Indiana Wesleyan. Concordia's 2 losses, though, are to Stetson, who is a Division I school, FCS school, and they actually played them. Yeah, we talked about this a few episodes back. They actually played them pretty competitively. Stetson's now 3-1, with their only loss coming to Princeton. So honestly, pretty impressive, non-conference game for them to play. And then they got beat on September 17th at Roosevelt, who's going to be a GLIAC school in a year or two here. Very close game, 28-20. Roosevelt's receiving votes nationally. I'm going to go with I think it's the Cardinals.
You're going to go
right?
First? You're going to go first?
Sorry. My bad. My bad, dog. I got too excited. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So Indiana Wesleyan's only lost this year is against FCS school Valpo, Indiana, 17-20.
Normally not good.
They're normally not good, but nonetheless, those guys it's still FCS. But given the facts that Vince had just presented to us, I am going to pick Concordia, the Cardinals, to win this game. It is on the road, but I don't think road games have too raucous of an atmosphere in NAIA. So unless I'm picking Concordia, they're going to roll.
I am also going to pick Concordia. I think going down to Florida to play an FCS school is a pretty and almost win against an FCS school who is currently 3-1. So I'm going to pick Concordia.
Oh gosh, you guys are making this hard on me. So Indiana Wesleyan did play Valpo. Valpo actually has won 2 games this year, which is actually very good for them. And they've played a fairly tough schedule. I'm going to go Indiana Wesleyan. It's in Indiana too.
All right. You heard it here first, folks. All right. The next game is a battle of unbeaten MIAA schools. Alma at Trine, both 4-0. Trine, our only non-Michigan school in the MIAA. Brett, who you got?
This is a tough one. Like you said, it's at Trine. Trine and Alma, they both have a common opponent, and Anderson. Alma beat Anderson on the road 45-7. Try and play Anderson to open up the year at home and won 38-0. So they both won pretty handily
Both won by
over
38 points.
Anderson. However, doing these stats weekly, there's a common theme of Indiana players, either on offense or Alma players on offense or defense, continuing to make the list. So I think the Scots are going to go on the road and pull this one off.
Tough pick here. So Brett's going with the Scots. Oh boy. I'm gonna go
One
with
T. One T.
what's that?
It's got one T.
Scots is 1T, not 2.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna go with the Thunder. I think Trine takes them down.
I'm going to take Elma. I think Elma Scott Nation stands up. I think they're going to be the pride of Mid-Michigan. They're going to have the best record of all 3 Mid-Michigan schools between Central Michigan, Elma, and Northwood.
You heard it here first, folks. That's my one opportunity to gain some ground this week on Brett. We'll see what happens. The last one, we have Central Michigan at Toledo. Central Michigan coming off of a tough loss to Penn State. Brett?
So this is going to be a fun game down in the Glass Bowl in Toledo. Both these teams are at the top tier of the MAC. I think Toledo is actually picked to win the MAC. I believe I had Toledo to win the MAC too. They got a great head coach in Jason Candle. Toledo's 2-2. Central's 1-3. This is the conference opener for both teams. Both teams
have homecoming for Toledo.
It is homecoming. Both teams have pretty elite offenses. I was surprised to see the over-under only at 56.5. I'm going to take the over on that one right after we get off this call. Toledo's quarterback, DeQuan Finn, former Detroit MLK quarterback. You might remember him. He played in a number of state finals games. Great athlete. I do think that the Rockets are going to pull this one off over the Chips in the tight one. I just don't see Central Michigan containing Finn, a dual threat quarterback who gave Ohio State a little bit of, not a fit, but they gave Ohio State, or he kind of challenged Ohio State a little more than most quarterbacks are able to, especially at the MAC level. But I think the Rockets are going to beat the Chips. Chips going to 1-4, that's a tough look. However, Toledo's being the best team in the MAC, they're going to get them out of the way and then hopefully play a couple of the other lower tier teams in the MAC the next few games.
What do I do here? Because if I get the Trine one and this one right, I could tie Brett this week. But if I get it wrong, then what if I get them both wrong? Decisions. I'm going to roll the dice here and go fire up Chips. I think they've played a hell of a non-conference schedule with a very good Southern Alabama team down at OK State, then at Penn State. Toledo obviously played a very good Ohio State team, but I would, argue playing UMass and LIU didn't necessarily prepare them, for good competition. That's why they got 77 put up on them by Ohio State. And then they went on the road at San Diego State and only lost by 3. But I'm gonna say Central Michigan pulls off a big time road win.
San Diego State is cheeks.
Brady Hoke.
They're still cheeks.
Kory, you could totally pull off Brady Hoke for Halloween. Just get yourself a little wig. And
Brady Hoke,
Dave, you have to save the stash.
You'd
Brady Hoke
put an inner tube inside your sweatshirt too.
Brady Hoke has like the typical guy who wears like his hair slicked and he almost looks like he like ran a comb perfectly through it. Like each hair is like its own line.
It's like a cornrow. It's like a unbraided cornrow.
Yeah. Oh shoot. Well, first off, just to say this, the Orioles lost 1-3, and I took them with 1.5, so I did not win tonight on my betting venture. But anywho, I am going to take the Chippewas. I think the Chippewas go down to Toledo. They learn how to play defense this week. Big C Johnson comes out and is blowing holes up. At right guard.
Blowing holes up. I like
It won't be the only hole he blows. Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
and yeah,
I just got very hard R there for a second.
and I think CMU wins.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, those are our picks of the week. Those are the games that we think. There's other games we think you should check out, but those are probably 5 of the biggest ones around the state of Michigan on all divisions, all levels. Anything else stand out to you guys from this upcoming week in terms of college football matchups that maybe we didn't talk about worth mentioning? The only thing I would add is Albion is playing at Kalamazoo and are playing against Kalamazoo, who's 3-1. Be interesting to see how 4-0 Albion does there, ranked number 20 this week in this nation.
Ferris plays Finley. Finley's normally a pretty good team.
What sticks out to me? There's a lot that sticks out to me this week. Number one, it's October 1st, opening day of hunting season. But it's kind of crazy. October's already here.
Saturday, yeah, it's already here. EMU maybe looking to get a bounce back win after an ugly loss to Buffalo.
Gosh, that was bad.
Mm-hmm. Western Michigan also looking to hopefully get a win over New Hampshire.
Yeah, I mean, not to transition too far, but Lions Seahawks, I think that's a good potential win for the Lions this week.
In Detroit, back in Ford Field, baby.
Well, just to go into the Lions this week,
we are just really lethargic online this week. I apologize.
Since that's where we're heading.
Tired.
I don't know if we beat Seattle, guys. I'm gonna be honest. Half our team's decimated.
So I read that none of the starting receivers practiced today.
None.
We're missing
Reynolds, Amon-Ra, and Shark did not play today, or did not practice today.
And Swift might be out for 2 weeks.
He is. Yep.
And Amon-Ra probably won't play this week. I think the other guys might play, but they haven't practiced.
Correct.
So what you're saying is
we lost Tracy Walker for the year with the torn Achilles.
Correct. Keep it going.
Our field goal kicker sucks.
Awarie single-handedly lost that game for us.
I think
a lot of people don't realize he had 5 defensive holding penalties by himself. Guess how many penalties the Lions had in the game?
Not very many.
5 defensive penalties.
Those are the only penalties they had were just his holding.
All on him. All on him.
That's really impressive that they were that clean all around, except for one player.
He was bad.
Yikes.
It was like 5 for 59, and he had all 5.
There's their 14 points. That's a big contributor for the 14 points.
I was driving back from Pennsylvania, and I swapped driving with my wife for like the last 6 minutes of the Lions game, and it was just the worst time to tune in because it just looked like something straight out of 2008. Like it's something you would totally expect. So depressing.
Up by 10 in fourth quarter and find a way to lose. The thing is they just find a way to score one touchdown in the second half. They scored no second half points. It was 24-14 at halftime. If they find a way to score one touchdown in the second half, there you go. They win the game. That's why I literally kept saying, I was watching the game. I'm like, if they could just score one more time, they'll win the game. And they couldn't score one more time.
I don't know what Dan Campbell was doing. So, like, I agree with his fourth down plays. Like, those
I love him
to go for is good.
I think he should have gone for fourth down when he kicked that 50-something yard field goal.
I'm getting there. Why did he not run the ball on fourth down? They were getting probably close to 4 yards per carry. Your line is moving, that D line. The one time we ran it on fourth down, he did like a reverse pivot, almost delayed backside dive.
How much input do you think he has in the play call, though? I would say he's probably the one saying go for it, telling Johnson to just go. Yeah, go for it here.
I don't know.
Don't you think Ben Johnson's the one making the play call?
I think if we do anything other than kick a field goal that final possession, I would like it. We could have literally took a dump at midfield, and I might have liked it.
Why? The thing is,
a field goal.
When you miss a field goal like that, it's more of a momentum shift than going on fourth down and losing it. And if you go for fourth down, the clock is still ticking. And
well, no, it stops. But
yeah, but the play is going to take at least 10 seconds off.
Yeah.
And then why not just pin them back? We have a
That's
great
what I
punt.
said. I said just punt it. Put it down at the 10. If they go 90 yards and score, you lose. You suck. But like to give them the ball at the 50,
midfield, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is Kirk Cousins, but still, they got cute.
True.
It's just one of those things that you don't realize until it's gone. What we had throughout pretty much our lifetime, and Jason Hansen and then Matt Prater. The Lions didn't have a field goal kicker last year, and it cost them at least 1 or 2 games.
I was at that game.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh. It just cost them the game this year. I mean, why don't they? Rodrigo Blankenship is a pretty solid kicker, and he got waived by the Colts after missing 1 field goal in week 1. He went 2 for 3, and he's a free agent right now. I don't know why they don't look at picking up Rodrigo. I mean, he's
probably there right now.
I would hope so.
It's frustrating, man. It's frustrating sitting in a stadium with 80,000 people, and you just know you just blew a game. And luckily, the people of Minnesota are really nice. Other than the jackass of a woman who thought she told a funny joke after the game, but we won't talk about her. It's so embarrassing. You're just sitting there like, holy shit.
On a more positive note, it sounds like Jameson Williams will probably play October 23rd versus Dallas.
That's good. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
How is he going to fit into this offense?
I don't know. He's one of those guys you just find a spot. I feel like he's going to be like a Josh Reynolds. I think he's going to get very limited playing time at first. Probably a more limited role. He's got to be better than Deal. He's probably, I don't know.
He's a different wide receiver than
he is. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm trying to like bounce in my head. I mean, he's tall and lanky, but he's probably fat. He's probably quicker than Amon Ross St. Brown is. I mean,
he's not tall. He's like 6'1".
That's pretty tall for a wideout with his sort of speed.
Chark's like 6'3" and Reynolds is like 6'3". So those are like big receivers.
Chark's been a little bit of a disappointment this year. He really hasn't done what he's getting paid to do.
Against Minnesota, he did.
Yeah. I didn't get to watch much of that game, so maybe I should watch what I'm saying. But nonetheless,
the week before he sucked. Yeah.
He can't be more upsetting than Kenny Galladay. Gosh, that guy sucks.
Dude, somebody paid him. Somebody paid him to be 30 years old and average.
Someone paid him to be the next Calvin Johnson, and he's being the next Mike Williams or Charles Rogers, but less trouble.
Mike Williams.
And then we had Roy Williams with the Lions. The list goes on and on. It's just never ending. Those are just dad jokes. Just start naming Lions.
Roy Williams was Chad Johnson, or not Chad Johnson, Jesus Christ, was Megatron before Megatron was Megatron.
Yeah,
Roy Williams was like 6'4", like 230.
He was a big dude. He wasn't nearly as fast or talented as Megatron was, but he was a big dude. He still had some moves. But I don't know. What's really frustrating for me is Lions finally get a running back in DeAndre Swift. I mean, think about all the guys we went through to get where we are. We had Kerryon Johnson, Amir Abdullah, Javid Best,
the guy out of South Florida,
Kevin Jones.
Yeah, Kevin Jones.
The list goes on and on. We finally get a running back. Joik Bell.
The
pride of Wayne State.
Harlan Hill candidate. Winner. He won the Harlan.
I think 2 times.
Vince is a proud jersey owner of Joik Bell.
It is the only football jersey I've ever owned is a Joik Bell Lions jersey. I thought I was pretty special getting that one.
Let's talk about this. Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell was the number 1 graded right tackle in all the NFL last week, and Taylor Decker's been a baller. We gave up 0 pressures. Well, I think we eventually gave up pressure, but generally speaking, we had a very clean game against a very good Minnesota defense. Pretty fun to watch. What's his name? The guy the DN for the Vikings that came over from Green Bay, Zadarius. Zadarius was getting in Decker's face all day, like with his hands, and Deck finally just went crazy. And then they paired Zadarius up against Penei, and he did the same thing to Penei, and this was so funny to see. So he gets up in Penei's face, and then the play goes away. He shoves Penei, and Panay like snaps on him, kind of like he did to Aaron Donald last year. They called a media timeout. Guys, I shit you not, Panay Sewell stood 20 yards from the huddle and stared at Zadarius Smith for 5 minutes.
The whole time out.
The whole time out.
That's a little concerning to me that he's not in the huddle.
He's a born killer. I support that. You know how big your scrote's got to be to just stand there and stare somebody down like that?
Difference.
I like it.
Well, all right, boys, we're going to be pushing 2 hours at this point with this episode. Anything else we want to add before Kory gets to his recommendation here?
Oh, God, that's going to be long, too.
Go
Long
Lions.
episode, baby. Hope you enjoy listening to it. Kory, give us your recommendation.
My recommendation of the week is US Bank Stadium. If you get a chance to go to a game, regardless if it's a Lions game, go. It was a really cool atmosphere. Like I said, there was a lot of things that went on. Other than football, the city of Minneapolis is actually, since the George Floyd stuff, dead, really. I mean, there's no pun intended. Sorry about that. But
Yikes.
there's just nobody down there. It's relatively empty, but for the game, it filled up. Decent tailgate scene. A lot of parking around the stadium. It's not like a pull into a parking lot stadium. It's just like an in-city stadium, but beautiful stadium.
Kind of like Ford Field.
Yeah. Yep. Beautiful stadium. Really cool event. We were in section 105. There is a cheese curd stand.
Oh, mama.
They were the greatest cheese curds I've ever eaten in my entire life.
Why are you
And they
smiling
were
so
like-
big? You're smiling
Because
so
they,
big.
they were so good. I didn't even buy them. That was the worst part. They were like the size of this mouse. They were like cheese curds that were clumped together and then deep fried in like a breading. Oh, unbelievable.
What was the name of
You
it?
didn't buy them, but you tried someone else's?
Yeah, Chad bought them. I didn't
Oh,
buy 'em.
gotcha.
I
What
got
was the
chicken
name?
fingers.
What was the name of the place? You know, they got to be of a chain.
No, I think it was the stadiums. Like I don't think it was a outside vendor. I think it was it was like the stadium's cheese curds.
I'm a real sucker for cheese curds.
Dude. So they gave him like a vat of cheese curds. It was like probably 15 fist-sized cheese curds. And we were all just eating them because I was like, Chad, you'll die today if you eat that. So
Did they give you enough ranch?
we didn't even need ranch.
Wow,
That's how good they were.
that's something.
I think it was like $20, but it was delicious.
Now Vince is starting to smile too. He's thinking about it.
It sounds pretty good.
US Bank Stadium, get the cheese curds. That's all I got.
All right. With that, I think we're going to wrap things up. I think by the time I put this together, this is going to be about a 2 hour and 10-minute episode. So hopefully you listened to the whole thing and enjoyed it. If you like what you hear, go over to Twitter. Give us a follow there at GLSF Ball. Find us over at Instagram at Great Lakes State Football. The video versions of this podcast are on YouTube. You can subscribe to us there. Please give the episodes a like and or a comment. Audio episodes can be found on Spodcast. Apple and Spotify is where you can find the audio episodes. Please add them to your library. Give us a 5-star review and a comment on the stores, Apple and Spotify stores. I'm Vince with Brett and Kory, Great Lakes State Football, episode 31. Go. I don't want to say go green this week. They were horrible. Go Chargers. They won. They're 3-1.
Go
Go blue.
Go
Get wet
Comets.
Lakers. Get wet Lakers. Go Tips. Fire up.